If this video gets 1,000 likes, I will go get a How I Met Your Mother tattoo. Anyway, let's talk about how context kills How I Met Your Mother. Jumping right into it, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The show is dated. Unlike with The Big Bang Theory, I was old enough to catch the not-so-PC jokes when I first watched this show. And through rewatches, I continually find more and more. Specifically, this show is very publicly transphobic, constantly joking about the concept of men being mistaken for women and vice versa, even using the T-slur on screen often. And unlike other sitcoms, this concept perpetuates through a long time in the show, well into the 2010s and more than half of the seasons. Here's one clip just to show you an example.
I love you.
I used to be a dude.
You can see my point. Now, something I want to mention here is that it's important not to dismiss the hate that comes from the intention of these jokes. However, I don't think the inclusion of these jokes makes the entire series unwatchable. Yes, there are some episodes that I'm not super excited about revisiting on a rewatch, but there are also some episodes that I can feel coming, and it fills me with an eager intensity to start really binging until I get to the episode that I love. Similarly, I also think it's important that we don't erase media with this type of language. Though some of the jokes were definitely not considered okay when the show first came out, it still exemplifies the point of view that, unfortunately, a lot of people had at that time. Addressing the idea that there are transphobic people in the world and that there used to be a lot more of them and these characters are just an example is important. The same goes for many of the other iffy jokes in the show. Take a look at Barney, for example, a womanizer who has definitely assaulted women and treats them like objects. To my understanding, pretty much everyone knows that Barney is not a good person. The truth is, all of these characters have flaws. That's kind of the whole point. And they all make sexist jokes at the expense of women pretty regularly. Not just the male characters, but the women too. In fact, one of the big draws of Robin as a character to her two love interests, Ted and Barney, is that she falls into the not like other girls category that we all know I despise. So yeah, the show's dated and it was never fully modern to begin with. Honestly, I think every sitcom will eventually reach that point. That's the reality of entertainment. But some problematic language shouldn't distract from the greater picture. And I think the greater picture of How I Met Your Mother is worth preserving. Another problem that a lot of people have with the series is that it's so long. And yet, we don't meet the titular character until the last season. That is 8 seasons of build-up, with 1 season of getting to know the character that, in theory, the entire show is about. So let's break it down season by season. Season 1 is about meeting Ted at age 27 and all of his friends. It's the creation of the core friend group of Ted, Marshall, Lily, Robin, and Barney. This season establishes the wants and needs of every main character, especially Ted, from tracking Victoria down to learning how to do a rain dance. This search for the one is the drive of the series. That drive, combined with Ted's attraction to Robin when episode 1 sets her up as explicitly not the mother, leads to what makes the series so enticing. Also, the mystery of the pineapple incident. Season 2 is about pretty much everyone except Ted. We get backstories, our introduction to Robin Sparkles, Lily's tendency to steal, Barney's brother, and Marshall and Lily's wedding, which also follows the first time that they haven't been together since college when Lily goes to San Francisco. During this season, Ted is with Robin and we begin to see all of the reasons why she's not the one, until eventually they break up. Now we get into a lot of Ted's flaws. Season 3 also begins the inclusion of this show's red strain theory, aka the yellow umbrella. We also see just how terrible a person Barney can really be, but also how much he cares about his friends, which explains why they keep him around. Season 4 is the season of Stella, more specifically, her leaving Ted at the altar. This has many long-standing consequences, leading to Ted following Barney's lead and making plays on girls, even ones that his friends are very disapproving of. Season 5 is when we start to see Barney and Robin's relationship. Ted is becoming confident in his new career, and Barney is deciding to be in a stable relationship, until he isn't. We also see Ted's impulsiveness, both through his buying of a house when he discovers that his mother is remarrying, and through a review of many of his past relationships. During season 6, Ted finds Zoe, which causes many ups and downs in his life. Alternatively, Barney finds Nora, but more importantly, he finds his biological father. This is the true climax of his entire character's development, which will be very important for a later point I'm going to make. In season 7, Barney breaks up with Nora for Robin, but Robin doesn't break up with Kevin for Barney. But everything's fine because Quinn shows up. Ted is mostly viewing the progression of his friends' relationships during this season, leading him to start questioning his own life and choices. And season 8 is where he makes all of the wrong choices, while Barney is making all of the right ones. Marshall and Lily have so much of their life together. Though it's not perfect, Ted gets to see how they get through it. Then, the wedding that encompasses season 9 approaches. And fast, spreading out a weekend wedding into 22 episodes. While I personally believe that all of these seasons are important to the show, and to the characters specifically, I will agree that there are a lot of filler episodes. While some of these become lifelong favorites like Blitzgiving, a lot are just kind of fine. Like The Perfect Week, where Barney tries to sleep with a different girl every day for a week straight and everyone encourages him. So yeah, going through each season, there's a lot of just okay episodes that don't really stand out. But at the same time, this show has very consistent ratings. Look at this chart of the first 8 seasons. I mean, the show is definitely not unappreciated. But then why do so many people look back on it with a negative light? I think it's time we talk about what truly ruined How I Met Your Mother. The ending. Let's look at that chart again, but include the 9th season. It's an insane drop-off in ratings, but why? It's pretty widely agreed upon that they cast the perfect person to play the mother. I love that they chose to dive in on how she met everyone else and her backstory. But was there just not enough focus on her? I doubt I'm the only one that finished the show and wished we had a million more episodes with the mother in it. The show is called How I Met Your Mother, so it is natural that the show would end once the audience finally meets her. And then they killed her. Okay, yeah, not the best idea on the writer's parts. Introduce the most lovable character in the entire world and say, oh, by the way, she's dead. And Ted is telling this story to his kids as a way of remembering her. Why would you do this to me, Ted? In the writer's defense, it was hinted at a few times, though admittedly not very often until the last season. Tracy is a wonderful character, and Ted ended up with his perfect wife, but there needed to be a reason for him to tell such a long story with a million details in it. I think if the show ended with that fact alone, yes, there would still be people that were upset, but I think a lot of people would understand. The problem is that they didn't stop there. In the very first episode of the show, we are very explicitly told that Robin is not the mother, but for most of the show, Ted is obsessed with her anyway. But then something major happens. Character arcs occur for both Ted and Robin, and they find other people who can make them happier than each other ever could. Robin ends up with Barney, and Ted lets her go just in time to meet Tracy. It's a perfect way to explain how everyone stayed in each other's lives. But the writers never planned for that way back in season 1. They always intended for Robin to end up with Ted. It's fairly common knowledge that they filmed the kids section of the finale during the earlier seasons. This was to prevent an obvious jump in age, which means that despite the character arcs that have been written over the last 8 seasons, Ted and Robin revert back to thinking that they were meant for each other, and so they end up together. What a stupid solution. Not only does this mess up Ted's development, but what really bothers me is how it messes up Barney's development. Barney's falling in love with Robin was exactly what his character needed. He goes from womanizer who only cares about sex to a respectable man who's trying to genuinely improve himself. And yet, for some reason, he ends up divorcing Robin and going back to his womanizer ways, until he has a daughter. That's when the character development resets again to his polite version. They wrote a far more interesting and complex way to explain how Barney became a good person, but they abandoned that. This commitment was their downfall. Parts of the finale were essentially the result of being stuck in what they filmed during the earlier seasons. Tracy's death and Ted and Robin ending up together. But were they really stuck? If you're like me, you've seen the alternative ending of the show on YouTube, the context of which really creates a problem for the fans. It shows how the writers could have handled the ending after years of developing these characters in ways they could never have predicted. But would that not have also been a little underwhelming? When a show goes on for such a long period of time and has a fan base like How I Met Your Mother's, where the anticipation is the driving force of the show, it's inevitable for there to be disappointment. Of course, I think they could have handled it better than they did. I also think that there's something to say for the planned ending. I like the fact that Tracy dies. It felt like a huge reveal that explained a lot of the story. But the fact that Ted continues to be hung up on Robin is what I can't stand about the ending. I personally do this little thing called pretending Robin and Barney never broke up. That's how I cope with it. It's kind of impossible to defend the show's ending because the writers did not realize how good of a show they had. This is a major reason why people can't think about this show today without bringing up the ending. However, I do think that there is one more piece of context that plays into why people have such a negative view of the show. Outside of just the ending or even the last season, people really hate Ted Mosby. And I can agree, he's not the most likable character. Like I said earlier, one of the key components of the show is that everyone has their flaws. But I do think that there's one part of the show that people who hate Ted aren't considering. Who is telling the story? That's right, Bob Saget himself. I mean, Ted Mosby himself. He's narrating his own life story, which makes him almost certainly an unreliable narrator. Now you might think, well, if Ted is trying to make himself sound better to his kids and he still sounds like such an awful person, he must have been even worse. That's where you would be wrong. When have you ever been told a story by a parent that didn't have an obvious lesson hidden in it? Perhaps they even dramatized the story and made it seem worse than it actually was for the purpose of some moral. Think, I used to walk to school uphill both ways, in the snow. Since Ted is narrating these stories, he's likely making the situation seem worse in order to teach his kids to be better than he was. He admits to cheating on girlfriends girlfriends, convincing a bride to run away with him, lying to get women to sleep with him, and many more obviously bad behaviors. Most of these side stories don't even end up being relevant to meeting Tracy. When else is Ted going to be able to tell these stories in an engaging way? In my opinion, Ted is probably not as bad of a person as he portrays himself to be. Especially with the context that throughout telling this entire story, there's also an overarching guilt of his feelings for Robin, even when she was with Barney, and maybe a little when he was with Tracy. Of course, the addition that he still loves her after Tracy's death actually helps with this point, but even without that, his bromance with Barney is strong enough to make him feel bad on its own. We can also be confident that Ted can and will lie to his kids during these stories. We know for a fact that he's done it just for a joke. In the very first season, he makes a joke about meeting the mother in a strip club, even having her introduce herself as Tracy. This is one of my favorite jokes in the show, because if it's your first watch, you have no idea why the name Tracy becomes so important, and by the time you get to season 9, you forgot about that joke in season 1, so you don't actually get it until you rewatch it. It's great. It's great writing, man. Now, he admits that this is a lie because if it wasn't, the whole story would be over. But this can serve as proof that not everything in the show is going to be entirely true. The writers almost set this up as insurance for inconsistencies, and they do the same thing a few seasons later with Katy Perry's character. Wild to look at that in 2026, okay? Ted admits to not even remembering this girl's name, so everyone in the show refers to her as Honey, which is obviously not what really happened. Again, showing how Ted's narration can influence the story. This unreliable narration is one of the things I love most about the show. It's how the writers can include ongoing gags about a goat crashing a birthday party. Just so happens that it also provides context about the world that the characters live in. I would bet that all of the characters have been dramatized by Ted's telling of the story, all to teach his kids lessons about life and the challenges that come with it. Did Barney really sleep with 200 women and keep track of every single one of their names on a list? Probably not, but it benefits the story of how the right person influenced him and changed his life for the better. A lot of dramatic moments of the show probably didn't actually happen in Ted's life. It's kind of refreshing to see a sitcom where the reality isn't so stoic and solid, and we will likely never be able to see that set up again. I mean, they tried, but I'm not watching that crap. Wow, I can't believe I forgot to record this when I did the original video, but thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Can't believe I forgot to mention Lily's debt as well. Like, that's definitely something that Ted would have exaggerated for the story. But yeah, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe so you can see more in the future. Hit that notification bell, you know, do all the things. I'm supposed to say this and boost engagement or something. What are your thoughts on the ending? What are your thoughts on How I Met Your Mother as a whole? Let me know in the comments down below, and I think that's about it. Why would I be biased?